Shalom Aleichem Rabotai. We're continuing the Mishnah Yomi for Yud Aleph B'Nisan, April 12th, in the fifth parak of Kilayim, which we begun yesterday, and now we're on the second Mishnah. Mishnah base, Kerem Shehu Natua al Pachot Me'arba Amot. A vineyard that is planted with a spacing between the rows less than 4 amot. Rabbi Shimon Omer Eino Kerem. Rabbi Shimon says this is not legally a vineyard. The reason being that the normal spacing between the rows was 4 amot in between each row. Again, for avodat kerem, a concept we learned in the last Mishnah, you need a workspace to bring in your workers, bring in your ox and your wagon to harvest and things like this. So if they're planted very close together, it's sort of just an irbuvia. It's sort of a mixture of grapes and not legally a kerem. Chachamim omrim kerem. So you just say this is a valid vineyard. Rowan at the emtzayot kilu enam, and we look at the middle ones. For instance, if you had rows 2 amot apart, so the outer rows are 4 amot apart, and you ignore the middle one, we look at it as if it's not there, kilu enan. And the reason for this, the Mefarshim say, is because people would normally plant a vineyard quite on purpose like this, and then they would look at which plants were matzliach, which were successful in growing well, and then they would take out the ones that were not doing very well. So it's interesting because in modern agriculture, they tend to plant things at a specific spacing to have in mind that that's the amount of space they need. But here they would plant a lot of extra plants, it seems, and then later pull out the ones that weren't growing as well and leave the ones that were growing very well, and they'd be left with sort of the normal spacing, the 4 amot spacing more or less, and they'd take out the ones from the middle and just simply use them as firewood. So it's another approach to growing strong grape plants, is to weed out the ones that are not doing quite as well. And you can actually do this yourself. You can try to learn a lot of topics. You try the Mishnah, you try the Daf Yomi, you try the Zohar HaKadosh, you try whatever you try, the Shnayim Mikra, and what really your soul feels attached to, you continue and you strengthen. And the other things you're going to learn later, because we're all going to learn all of Torah, we're all going to learn Kol Torah Kulo. But whatever your neshama attaches to, whichever form of learning you attach to right now, keep that and strengthen that, and the other ones will wait. Mishnah Gimel. Charitz shu over bekerem amuk asar chav arba, a ditch going through a vineyard, which is 10 deep and 4 wide. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, im haya mefulash, if it goes all the way through from one side of the vineyard to the other side, it looks like it's the barrier in between 2 vineyards, and you can sow a different species in that ditch. That ditch now looks like it's not part of the vineyard, but a separation between vineyards. Im lav, if it doesn't go from one end to the other, gat. If it doesn't, it's like a gat. A gat is a wine press, but it's referring to the wine press area, which was a lower area, sort of a basin on the edge of the vineyard, where they would trample the grapes and extract the liquid. Now, we've seen this concept that a ditch can divide back in the 4th parak. In the 3rd Mishnah, we talked about a fence. If the fence is 10 tall or the ditch is 10 deep, then it was a valid division. But now we're learning we could even plant in such a division inside a vineyard if it goes from one end to the other, according to the first opinion. And now we're going to see another opinion, hagot shebekerem, and if there's this lowered area, this ditch that they're using as a gat inside the vineyard, amuka asara chavarba, and it's 10 tfachim deep and 4 tfachim across. Rabbi Eliezer Omer zorim betocha, you can sow seed in there. Chachamim omrim asurim. So Eliezer would say, even if your ditch does not go from one end to the other, but your ditch is big enough to constitute a wine press area, you could go ahead and sow an extra crop in there. Obviously, if they're going to use it as a wine press itself, they would take out everything. So you can actually have the wine be pressed there. The Chachamim say, we don't allow that. They would want it from one end to the other. Shomeira. Shomeira is a mound that was used for shmira, for guarding. It's like a watchman's tower, but here it's a mound of dirt that the watchman can stand on and make sure people aren't taking grapes. So the shomeira shebekerem, gavoa asara chavar ba, zoim betoicha. If it's 10 tfachim tall and 4 wide. You could plant another species on top of there, probably something that the shomer wouldn't mind if you have a shomer there. Im hayaser kotesh aser. If the hair is going over, again, this hair is the vines and the leaves of the grapevines, aser. You can't plant something else there because the grapevines are already sort of taking up space over the mounds. As we saw in the last Mishnah, in the 4th parak, that somebody used to train the vines and leaves to the inner side and sow other crops on the outside because he had a 16 amma gap, and that was allowed there. So again, that's the seir. Shkoyach Rabosai.